Are any of the X-ray attacks in Mortal Kombat X actually survivable? Or will all of them send you straight to the morgue?
Watching from the sky, a beam of light. I am electric eye.
How about a little drink? Did it go to your head?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Chamber of the Wraith. My name is Brian, I'm here with the cat, and today we're reviving an old series. Sneak Peek, my old little mini review series thingy that I used to do, but haven't done in a long time. I'm bringing that back, so now we are looking at what I first covered in the Sneak Peeks, must have been almost a year ago now, and we're finally taking a look at
Omen of Sorrow.
Yes, that's right. Omen of Sorrow for the PlayStation 4, obviously. I think it's also out on other platforms. I'll probably post a correction to myself here, calling myself a doofus or something. But yes, Omen of Sorrow is finally out, and we're going to take a look at it at its full glory. Sounds like fun, right? Well, I'm going to retool the Sneak Peek as well to be a proper review show, letting you know what's good, what's bad, and whether you should get it, wait for a sale, or hold off. You know what I mean? So, let's dive right in. One of the most important parts of any game is its presentation, and Omen of Sorrow actually does a fairly good job of its presentation. Now, this game was made by a team of 30 people at A1 Games, which is a studio based in Santiago, Chile. And this game is actually looking pretty good for being only made with a team of 30 people, especially considering that, so far as I know, this is their first ever proper release of a game, and that this game had a couple of years of development time. If you compared how this game looks now to how it looked in 2016 when it was first revealed, the PlayStation experience, it's actually come quite a long way, relatively speaking. Like, have a look at the graphics here, for instance. A place of legendary concepts. Like, look at Gabriel. He definitely looks like he could use a bit more of a polish. And compare him to Gabriel now, Gabriel actually looks pretty interesting, and you can even see how stages have kind of changed over time. The Egyptian stage, for instance, has changed from being dark and kind of a bit too gloomy, in my opinion, even with the atmosphere, all the way to, if we move to the second trailer from PlayStation Experience the next year in 2017, you can see how this stage has kind of brightened up a little bit, even with this later trailer. It's brightened up quite a bit, and you can see now that Gabriel actually looks pretty decent in comparison to how he used to look. And a nice change I like is that, well, not necessarily a change, a nice thing that I quite like is that the round names are kind of based off of biblical things, like the first fight's in Inferno and then the second one's in Purgatory. It's a really neat touch, and overall I think Omen of Sorrow does a pretty good job of this presentation, especially considering the team that it's worked with. I quite like how it's presented. Now, any game that has bad gameplay is automatically terrible. However, you don't have to really worry about that with Omen of Sorrow, because, in my opinion, its gameplay is actually pretty good. It's fairly basic, sure, but as a fighting game, it gets the job done quite effectively. And its unique Fortune Fate gimmick, including the Doomed system, which is explained in this quick guide, is an excellent way to kind of keep you on your toes. Omen of Sorrow is focused on offense, where the Fortune system is built up by using more offensive tactics, while your Fate system is built by being more defensive. And keeping these meters in check is key to any good fight. You can use your Fortune meter in order to utilize blessed systems in order to gain infinite cancels and such things, or you can try and risk it and use more of your Fate in order to augment your defensive abilities and to get away. One spot where Omen of Sorrow does struggle, though, is load times. This is not slowed down. The load times for me to get into the training mode in order to pick my character is about 20 seconds. And that load time does not vary across modes. Now, hopefully in future patches this could get optimized to be a little bit faster, but that is my main gripe. Now, with 2 unlockable characters and a total roster of 11, Omen of Sorrow doesn't boast the largest roster of any fighting game. In fact, its roster is closer in size to early fighting games like Street Fighter 2 and the first Mortal Kombat. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. With a larger roster, for instance, you'd have to worry more about balancing and making each character stand out. With only 11 playable characters, it's actually quite easy to keep things interesting and make each character unique, which Omen of Sorrow does quite well, as you will soon see.
Gabriel.
Now it is time for us to have a look at the roster of the game itself, and a few other notes that I didn't really have enough to build a category on. Gabriel is a pretty decent zoning character, and with his bolt cancel ability means that he can keep you full screen pretty decently. Bolt cancels, by the way, take up 2/3 of your fortune gauge, so it's worth keeping in mind when you're trying to deal sorts of crazy cancels. And of course, you'll get unlimited of those if you activate the full-blown blessed mode. Now, one thing I do want to kind of note, and it's not necessarily a harping because it's such a small development team, but at the same time, it's worth noting the animations are kind of stiff, and sometimes things don't quite make sense with how things are animated, and sounds aren't as impactful as I would like them to be, but overall, they're just physical, like, cosmetic things that I'm not personally a fan of, but I look forward to see improved in the future. Now, Zafkiel's all rushed down. She's high speed. Her run, I believe, will low profile many different things, and she has a pretty fast run, combined with a unique sort of parry that allows her to dodge attacks. Even her level 1 super, which, by the way, another thing that I'm not too keen on is that some of the meter burns, or EX burns in this game, require half a bar, while others require a full bar, which basically makes them cost as much as a level 1 super type move. Whereas these level 2 decimation moves, they're quite cool, but I wish the faces would animate so it's not quite as creepy. But Dr. Hyde is probably my favorite character. He is an odd combination of a resource character and a grappler. He's got several moves that kind of act as grapples. He's the only member of the cast who can throw while on the run. And he can even mix and match his vials to a degree. He can mix a light and a heavy vial type in order to get different effects, like poison freeze or explode and whatever the light green one does. Black, which is his EX vial, is my personal favorite because it forces the opponent into a random style of movement. Forward, crouching, going back, or even jumping. And like I said, Mr. Hyde is all about grappling, so he also, of course, has quite a lot of damage. He can also buff himself, either his speed, based off of using the kick version of the buff, or by using the punch version to augment the amount of damage he does. The heavy version of the damage buff increases his damage by 20% and lasts long enough to go through the entire level 2 decimation animation, which lasts quite a while. Now, Caleb, being a werewolf, has a Rekka-style attack and the ability to pounce on his opponents, and can low profile while moving forward. And he's the only one in the game that I know of so far that has a counter super, and it says level 2. So, bear that in mind. It's pretty nasty, though. Some of the sound design is great, I will say, but again, some of it can be improved. Radagonda, she's an interesting breed. She is air superiority. She doesn't even have a ground dash or run. When she dashes / runs, she moves skyward and eventually will go into her natural hover state, which can also be augmented as a move. Her air throws are great, but have a lot of recovery if they miss. And as a charge character on the ground, a lot of her moves require her to keep in charge. Kind of like Guile from Street Fighter. If you're wondering what a charge character is, it just means you have to hold a certain input for a long enough time in order to do it. Vladislav can also zone, but he can move with his projectile into many different mix options, which unfortunately I could not capture because I need to learn this character more. But Vladislav's level 1 super actually acts differently depending on the gender of the character. Females, he kind of like does the dance move with them and then bites them, whereas dudes, he just kind of puts them on the ground and chomps on their wrist. It's an interesting touch, which kind of makes sense because of a certain viewpoint of vampires. And now it's time for my final verdict. What do I finally think about Omen of Sorrow? Well, here's the thing. This game retailed at almost full price. And what do you get with that full price asking? You get 9 characters at the start and 2 more you can unlock. A pretty decent and deep combat system, although it seems a little bit unrefined at the moment. Perhaps because this is their first game, much less first fighting game. And the load times are quite atrocious, but I have high hopes. Maybe I'm just an optimist, but I hope that they could get fixed in the future. What do I think overall? I think you should wait on a sale for this one, in my opinion. Wait for it to come down in price a little bit, then pick it up. As a fighting game on its own, it's actually pretty decent, but it's not the best in the world, and quite frankly, hopefully A1 Games takes what they've learned from Omen of Sorrow and uses it to build something even better. Now, I want you to enjoy, for the final part, a little bit of the first chapter in the story mode, of which there are 3. And, as always, don't forget to be awesome, guys.
Chapter 1. Attack! Counter! 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 Fallen! Counter! Fallen!
It's over!